In 1972, a werewolf prowled the streets of Defiance, Ohio. At least, that was the buzz all over town. It may seem like a frivolous claim, but police took the reports very seriously. From the South Shore of Lake Erie, this is Great Lakes True Crime Halloween episode 2022. Located in northwest Ohio, Defiance is the county seat of Defiance County, about 55 miles or 89 kilometers southwest of Toledo, Ohio, and 47 miles or 76 kilometers northeast of Fort Wayne, Indiana. The population was 16,741 as of the 2020 census. Defiance is the home to many notable people, including race car driver Sam Hornish Jr., who won the 2006 Indianapolis 500. Now back to the story. In July 1972, a great year by the way, police began receiving reports that a large beast resembling a werewolf was seen lurking along the railroad tracks near downtown Defiance. All of the alleged sightings occurred in the early morning hours, and all were made by men. One man working at the railroad said he was attaching an air hose from one train car to another when he looked down and saw the enormous, hairy feet of a werewolf below him. When he looked up, he saw the creature holding a large 2x4 piece of lumber, and the werewolf proceeded to strike the man on the shoulder with the piece of wood and then run off into the woods. Another railroad worker reported that he saw the werewolf around 3 a.m. a few days later, although he had no interaction with it. And a third report came from a local grocery store worker driving home from a late shift at work around 4 a.m. when he saw the beast from his car. The two railroad workers, Ted Davis and Tom Jones, worked for the Norfolk and Western Railroad, which provided local overnight freight service. Both of their sightings were said to have occurred under a full moon. What makes that even more incredible is that the men told a newspaper reporter that when they leave their house in Toledo, where they live, the moon could be a quarter full. Yet, when they arrive at the rail yard in Defiance, the moon is full. Ted Davis reported the first sighting of the werewolf, and Jones laughed it off, assuming it was a co-worker pulling a prank. However, all the rail yard workers were accounted for, and Jones became concerned. Tom Jones then saw the werewolf himself, noting that it was wearing blue jeans. Jones said that when he first saw the creature, he also assumed it was someone playing a joke on him, but when he saw how hairy and woolly it was, Tom was frightened. The two men also reported hearing screams coming from a car in the area. The first media report of the sightings was published on August 2, 1972. When contacted by the Toledo Blade newspaper about the sightings, Defiance Police Chief Donald Breckler said, quote, "We don't know what to think. We got the first report about a week ago, but now we're taking it seriously. We're concerned for the safety of our people." The chief went on to say that he did not think this was a prank, and he doesn't think that whoever or whatever this is motivated by robbery. The werewolf didn't take anything from the people it encountered, and you wouldn't expect a railroad worker to be carrying around much cash or valuables to begin with. The chief didn't think that an actual werewolf was prowling the streets of Defiance, but suspected that this was someone wearing a mask and a costume. As we said earlier, though, police took the sighting seriously, fearing that someone was going to get hurt. Chief Breckler said that the descriptions police received were all very similar, yet vague, if that makes sense. The first detail each person reported was that the creature was very hairy. It was also described as being barefoot and standing upright, yet frequently hunched over. One other complicating factor in determining what exactly was roaming the streets of Defiance was that it was described as being 6 to 9 feet tall, obviously much larger than the average human, or even the tallest humans for that matter. The railroad workers gave additional details, saying that whatever they saw had huge fangs and lunged from side to side, similar to the movements of a caveman that they had seen in movies. When word got out about the werewolf, many people in Defiance were frightened, with some in outright hysteria. Everyone was on the lookout, and many people reported strange sightings. In one instance, a man ran into the police station at 1 a.m. and reported that, quote, something had followed him as he walked through the streets of downtown Defiance. The man didn't actually see anything, but the police report noted that the man was certain something followed him because he had, quote, a crawly feeling up the back of his neck. The police report also noted that the man was in near hysteria, and he spent the remainder of that night in the lobby of the Hotel Henry. Just 10 minutes after that report, a resident on the north side of the city called police and said that a friend was at her house, and the friend was, quote, almost in hysterics. Apparently, the friend had heard about the thing and was scared to death. The caller requested that police come and talk to her friend. The woman also reported that every night, about 2 a.m., someone or something rattles her doorknob. She said that if someone or something comes through her door, she would shoot it. In fact, her exact words were quoted in the newspaper as, quote, if I see him, the police are going to find out who he is. That's because they'll have to take him to the hospital to get the buckshot out. But not everyone in Defiance was scared, however. The Toledo Blade quoted several residents as mostly dismissing the sightings, attributing it to a hoax. One man did note that while he wasn't scared personally, and most other adults weren't scared, many of the children in town were frightened. The peculiar sightings were not limited to Defiance, though. At the same time of these werewolf sightings, a man named Harold Annon in the Tiffin, Ohio area, which is about 70 miles or 112 kilometers east of Defiance, reported seeing an ape-like creature about 6 to 7 feet tall walking in a wooded area on River Road just north of Tiffin. When he got spotted by the creature, the man drove off as quickly as possible. After this report, the county game warden checked the area for signs of ape men, but shockingly, he didn't find any odd tracks or disturbances to vegetation. So after a few weeks, the werewolf sightings in Defiance stopped. Whether a real werewolf decided to move along, or if a man in a mask realized he may get shot if he keeps it up, we may never know. I did learn about the term dogman when looking into this story, and apparently dogmen are a big deal. Perhaps I'll look into them more as time permits, but for now, we'll have to be content with the Defiance werewolf. I also learned that Ohio is home to many mythical creatures, or are they mythical? A couple I have heard of previously, but most of them I haven't heard of. According to this list I found online, the 11 most bizarre creatures in Ohio folklore are the following. 1. The Loveland Frogmen, a trio of creatures that were part human, part frog. 2. Is Grassman, who was a little smaller and more human-looking than Sasquatch. 3 is Mothman, a legend that apparently goes back several centuries to a time when the Wyandot people lived in the Ohio River Valley. Next up is the Minerva Monster, who was first seen in the late 1970s. Number 5 is the Cedar Bog Monster, who was said to have lived in the Cedar Bog State Nature Preserve. 6 is Orange Eyes, who might actually be an alien, according to some people. Next up is the Charles Mill Lake Monster, who was 7 feet tall and had webbed feet, and may have been a scuba diver, but I digress. 8 is the Crosswick Monster, who hasn't been seen in over 200 years, so I think we're probably safe from the Crosswick Monster. Number 9 is the Peninsula Python, and Peninsula is also the home of Helltown, which I covered in a previous Halloween episode. 10 is Dogman, who seems to have migrated to Ohio from Michigan. And of course, the most famous of all Ohio mythical creatures is Bessie, the Lake Erie Monster, who was first spotted in 1793. And I've got a link to this list in the show notes if you're interested in reading a little more about all of these creatures that are inhabiting the state of Ohio. And that's all for this brief episode of Great Lakes True Crime. Special thanks to friend of the show, Sarah, who clued me in to the Defiance werewolf and provided some great reference materials. I had never heard of this phenomenon before, so I'm glad I looked into it. Also, many thanks to those who recently left 5-star reviews on their podcast app. If you haven't left a 5-star review, I could really use your help as it helps get the word out about the show. And for Great Lakes True Crime, this has been Steve, your host and producer. Thanks for listening, guys, and happy Halloween.